education, I think you need to have a proper education in marketing. And I think there are too many people who have the title of marketing manager, who may have some strengths in digital marketing, some background in digital marketing, or maybe some backgrounds in sales. And they refer to themselves as experts in marketing. Well, I don't think they're experts in marketing. They may be very good at social media marketing or digital marketing or sales, but to be truly knowledgeable about marketing, you have to have an education in marketing. You have to be able to understand some of the theories, especially the more contemporary theories around what's coming out of Ehrenberg Bass. You have to understand the impacts of what we now know in terms of behavioral economics and neuroscience that should inform the way that we think about how consumers actually buy and how much of our buying is actually unconscious buying. And then, of course, if you don't have a profound understanding of how marketing communications actually works based on maybe some of the leading empirical research that's been done by Burnett and Fields on behalf of the Institute for Practitioning Advertisers in the UK, you don't really have a clear understanding that we really need two streams of marketing communications. We need brand building and we need sales activation or performance marketing, and they need to work hand in hand. So that's why these three areas are really the pillars of the course that I teach, for brand management. So the first thing is you need an education. The second thing that I think is truly important is you need curiosity. You need to always be curious about two things. I've worked across many different categories, many different types of markets, B2B, B2C, service, product. And what I've learned over time is that my basic knowledge of marketing can translate into many of those markets. But there's always nuances. So if you don't understand the context, you don't really comprehend how best to use these basic frameworks, the empirical evidence that I have of what works in other categories in this new category. So you've got to be curious, and you've always got to see the glasses, half empty and, rather than half full. And you've got to be constantly looking for what you don't know. And I think, if I was to take this idea of a real education and curiosity, I would say that lifelong learning. I'd say for me, these are the three most profound things, because there are many people who studied a view of Kotler marketing, maybe in their undergrads, and they believe that is kind of the leading edge of stuff today. And they've never read anything in the Ehrenberg Bass knowledge area. And that's because, quite frankly, they don't believe that there's anything more to learn and to understand, but there always is. So part of being, I think, a professional in any area that you might work in is that there's always new knowledge. And, the most important advice I give to MBAs or Masters of Marketing, or if they finish taking my courses at Schulich, or even my EMBAs when I teach on the Kellogg-Schulich program, is my advice to you is it's like receiving a black belt as a karate exponent. Your black belt is an award and honor for achieving a certain status. But as my karate teacher once said to me when I got my black belt, he said, now you can be a good student. So for those people who take courses at Schulich and, pass marketing management, pass brand management, get all of these credits, my advice to you is think of yourself always as, now I can be a good student. I have started my journey, not I have completed my journey. So those three things, I think, get a real marketing education, be curious, and then continue throughout your lifetime to always be seeking to understand what you don't understand. What is the new knowledge that you need to, make sure that you can continue to gain some insight from on how to be a truly great marketer. Of course, these pillars are always relative, right? I mean, I've been doing this now for a long time. So what I would say to someone is, I would change the pillars maybe a little bit for people who are fairly new to the marketing area of practice. So the first is, I'd say, get a marketing education. Then I'd say, be curious. Then the third thing I'd say to them is, in terms of a pillar for new marketers, are you truly passionate about this area of endeavor? And when I question them to understand, let's call it passion, there's very simple ways of testing whether someone is really passionate. And it's based more on what do they do each day than rather what do they say they do. So for instance, an example, when I'm sitting with somebody who's taken my course, even someone who's shown a great capacity, maybe got an A- or higher, they've clearly been interested in the course, they've attended to stuff, they've leaned in, good class contribution. It's clear to me that they've worked hard to get the education that they have. And I've seen a high degree of curiosity. What I don't yet understand, though, is to what extent they have a real passion for the field. Now, here's where a passion for the field is exhibited. Remember, I use the words what you do rather than what you say. So when I sit with a student who, at the end of the semester says, I'm looking to get into marketing, can you help me? And I might review with them the first two pillars that I've just suggested. The way that they develop their knowledge, and it's clear that they have a curiosity. But I ask them then questions to try and understand how passionate are they really. So one of the questions I might ask is, what have you read since my brand management class? By the way, what blogs do you attend to? Who do you follow on social media? It's a leading luminary. In my class, you learned about Les Bennett and Peter Field. Do you follow them on Twitter? Have you tried to follow their conversations on LinkedIn? How about Mark Ritson? By the way, I gave you a whole bunch of additional video. Now, why is this all important? Ultimately, when you go to interview, if you're fortunate enough to get an interview, what may separate you from other marketers or other people who are looking for the same job shouldn't be whether you have an education. That should be a table stake. I wouldn't employ anyone who didn't have a profound education that was updated to include Ehrenberg Bass. I would expect you to demonstrate some curiosity in terms of what you've learned and what you do and what your interests are. Somebody who likes to understand markets, consumers, that kind of stuff. But then I'd ask the question to try and understand how deep really is your passion. And you would get questions from me like, so tell me about an advertising campaign that you think recently demonstrates some of the concepts that you just learned at university. Or I might say the Super Bowl was just last week. Which ads did you really like? Why do you think they were effective? I might ask you, you finished your MBA 4 months ago. You told me that you used How Brands Grow Too. Have you read Distinctive Brand Assets yet? You get my point. And it's these ways that I think you really, if you're going to be honest with yourself, if you're not really interested in doing that, that would suggest that that third pillar that I used earlier of lifelong learning is already something that maybe you're less interested in doing, except when it's on the job. That's the connection between those two. Lifelong learning is about having a passion for the craft. There are really three that I guess that are that were important because they came at different stages in my life, and so were really one was very formative. In 1986, I got to launch in South Africa a range of oil-free dressings. Clearly, Nestle was only in the white salad dressings market, mayonnaises, salad creams, that kind of stuff. And it had no position in the other part of the dressings market, which is pourable dressings, so non-pourable and pourable. And I'd been sent on a course to Vevey in Switzerland, and a new brand manager, a new products course for brand managers. And we had lecturers from IMD all morning, and in the afternoons and on the weekends, we had to work on the launch of a new ice cream into the US market, a real project. And we worked with advertising agencies and packaging agencies, and we developed mock-ups of the packaging and animatics, rough advertising concepts. And then the end of the courses, we had to present those to some senior managers from the US market and to the instructors at Riv Ren, which is the Nestle Business School. Anyway, after that project, I was sent to, my boss had set up some meetings in Europe for me to make the best of my time while I was there. And I went to the German market, I went to the French market. And there was purpose to this. It was, yes, to give me an education, to expose me to other Nestle companies, but they both had pourable dressings businesses. And my objective was to go and speak to them about recipes, formulations, their success. The Germans have a brand called Tomi, which is a very successful salad dressings brand. And they had just recently launched no oil salad dressings. It was one of the ones that I wanted to chat to them about. Anyway, to me, it seemed like a no-brainer. The competitors in the South African market were very strong competitors, nor being the most powerful of the competitors in the pourable salad dressing area. Nestle owned the non-pourable white salad dressing area, the huge market share. So, I borrowed the concept, went back, did some research. We started to make some subtle changes to the formulations for I'm so lost in this Canadian thing now. I'm so Canadian, I can't say South African anymore. For South African consumers, we worked with our advertising agencies to prepare the advertising campaign. We launched with 3 pourable dressings, Greek, Italian, and French. And we had a wonderful campaign that we developed around that idea. It was an enormous success. I was 26. It was just a fantastic opportunity for me as a young person to literally help the company enter a category that they had struggled to get into for years, even though they really had the dominant market share in non-pourable dressings. The second marketing communications campaign that for me was really a fun one. Now I won't get confused between South Africa and Canada. Now I'm in Canada. I think the year was 1990 or 1991. I'd been here maybe a full year. And I was working on the Libby's canned pasta and Libby's baked beans range. It was a $100 million Canadian business that I was the senior brand manager of. And we had gone down to the New York Toy Show because Libby's canned pasta has some licensed properties that they've used in the past. It's the idea that kids have fun while they're eating, kind of play with their food, alphabet shapes, and all of those kinds of things. So we thought it would be a good idea to go down, see what were the hot properties in the toy market, one of which was Tiny Toons. So I started a conversation with the licensee and with various toy companies. It led to some further discussions once I got back to Canada with the holders of the license, the franchise. And that was Warner Brothers in the US. Anyway, we, over time, did a bit of research and determined that we would launch Tiny Toons canned pasta. Now, the reason that this is of interest, it was like the other campaign was shortly after I started in marketing. Now this is my first campaign in Canada. But it was fun because I'd never worked on animation before. So we actually worked with a Canadian animation house to do the advertising. We briefed them. We did all of the strategic stuff. Of course, there were some very tight guidelines, as there always is, from licensed properties, from the license holder. And anyway, we developed the advertising. But the really fun part of all of this was the advertising had to be approved by Warner Brothers in Burbank and by Amblin Promotions. Now, you may not know what Amblin Promotions is, but it's actually Steven Spielberg's production house. So Steven Spielberg had an interest in Tiny Toons. So I was sent down with the head of creative from the advertising agency. We had to present to Warner Brothers and get their blessing. I'd never been in California before, and so I then got a tour of the whole Warner Brothers studio, the backlot, everything. And then we had to go to Amblin Promotions. And I sat in the company of Steven Spielberg for about 2 minutes while he blessed our efforts. Of course, I'm quite certain he doesn't remember me, but I remember him very, very well. And it was just this incredible opportunity. And then we got some of his more junior staff took us for a walk around Amblin Promotions. And it was really amazing because, of course, I got the opportunity to go back and visit Burbank and Hollywood many, many times when I was head of marketing at Disney. The last campaign that I would talk about, these are like the top 3 that just kind of were top of mind very quickly. After I'd been a consultant for a number of years, I got a call from the chief executive officer at the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. And long story short, he'd got a recommendation on me. His chief marketing officer was very busy with some issues that they were dealing with at the OLG, and he didn't have bandwidth to take on a special project. So I got a call. I was asked to come into the office. I got interviewed. And essentially the consulting project was, would I take on a 6-week consulting gig where the OLG had recently launched about a few months prior, a new casino called Falls View Casino in Niagara Falls. And I was asked if I'd take on a 6-week, 2-month consulting project, spend about 2 to 3 days a week in Niagara Falls and try to understand what had gone wrong and why wasn't the casino achieving its sales forecasts, at that point in time after its launch. Anyway, I came back, I delivered my report to the CEO, and the CEO was sitting there with the president of the casino. The commercial casinos are operated by third-party private companies. They're not actually operated by the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. Basically, the third-party companies provide some money to build the casinos. They then get to run them. They get to make money from doing that. And oversight is provided by the Ontario Lottery Corporation and by the regulatory arm in Ontario. It's a provincial business. Anyway, later that afternoon, I got a call. Ashley, are you the kind of consultant that just makes recommendations? Or are you prepared to go and implement your recommendations? I was like, wow, what do you mean? Well, we've decided to let the head of marketing go at the casino and we want you to take the job. Would you take it for 6 months? I must admit I said no at first because highly politicized, very difficult environment. I don't think they particularly like me. I think they would always see me as the enemy planted there by the OLG. But later on, we had a discussion about how well paid I'd be. And I guess everybody has their price. So I said yes. And I took the job. The job actually was extended for an additional 2 months. So it was extremely well paid. But while I was there, we worked on a campaign to reposition Fallsview around the idea, because Fallsview is a very grand casino compared to any of the other casinos that are in Ontario and to the competition across the border. And we literally did a campaign that was live action and animation, and the characters were animated, kings and queens. So we try to position it as a really high-end place where you would receive, the kinds of treatment that kings and queens could expect. So I got to work on a new style of communication. I got to work with a very big agency in Toronto, a very well-known one, and a bunch of other agencies to ensure that the campaign was properly integrated. It was a lot of fun, and if you'd asked me just a few months before if I thought I'd actually be doing that as head of marketing for both Fallsview Casino and for Niagara Falls Casino, I had to run both of them suddenly, I would have thought you were daft. But anyway, so those are the 3 campaigns that come to mind. That's a very interesting question. We already know from neuroscience that if we want to properly encode memory, that different parts of memory are more likely to be encoded by, say, words versus visuals. So the truth is that to properly encode memory, we need to understand how different types of memory supports the encoding process. I've often used the term that a picture paints 1,000 words. And I've done that because I think it is easy to, well, first of all, I tend to be a very visual learner. So if I'm, somebody's often, recommended podcasts to me. The challenge that I have with podcasts is, having listened to them in the past, I don't think I retain as much as if I read something. So seeing it, I think it's more definitively imprinted in my brain. I just learn better that way. I also think that visuals, it's easy to accord to visuals an emotional appeal. People looking sad, people looking tired, people looking very angry, people looking very happy. And I think that visuals can provide so much context in a quick glance. In time, what period of time are we looking at? In space, is it something close up or distance? And and the artifacts that we can see that fill the picture. So if we take, time, space, artifacts, in an instant, a whole story can be created visually. And so I do think a picture, speaks 1,000 words. To do justice to a picture, you'd certainly, I don't know if you'd have to write 1,000 words, but you might have to write a few hundred words, that's for sure. So yeah, I am a believer in it. And as I say, I'm a very visual learner. They know about my cycling. They know about my karate. I think I'm such an open book. It's pretty hard to hide anything. A talent of mine, I think it's a talent. My wife and my children certainly do not. But, if I've had a bit of a party and I've maybe imbibed one or two too much, I like to sing. And so I'll just break out in song. Certainly, as I say, I sometimes get looks from my two daughters and my wife, which are like, maybe you could stop doing that. But when I'm in if I choose to have a bath, which I don't do frequently, but occasionally I do, or if I'm having a shower, I sing in the shower, I sing in the bathtub. I think music makes me happy. And I do like an audience, but sometimes, as I said, the audience here is like, could you stop doing that? I'm going downstairs now, thanks very much. But sometimes they'll, when they'll let me sing, when I'm singing happy birthday to them. So I'm known by my friends from around the world, close friends. If it's their birthday, whether they're in South Africa or the United States or Europe or wherever they might be, they will get a call from me. I don't go on LinkedIn or on Facebook or any of that. I'm talking about people I've known for many, many years. And they'll answer the phone, and then the normal thing is, oh goodness, not you again. Because I just break into happy birthday, I'll give them the whole thing. And of course I do it very theatrically, so I might sing some lines 2 or 3 times just to make the point, So I guess that is a talent of mine, singing happy birthday, because I practice that, and I think I get that. That's my best singing, okay, when I do that. I think it's a talent. My students probably would go, maybe you should stick to teaching brand management. So, but that's about the best I've got to offer for you right now. Oh yeah, that's a fairly easy one for me. So it's a good thing I'm older. I say that because I had a woman, a girlfriend that I was dating many years ago, and she said something to me which I didn't quite understand. I didn't know what the basis of it was. She said, you're in touch with your feminine side. And I wasn't taken aback by it. I just was nonplussed by it. It was like, I was known as a bit of a jock, very good at sports. I played rugby, I played soccer. So a couple of days later, I quizzed her on it, and I said, you made this comment the other day when we were together. What did you mean? So she said, well, I think you've got a well-developed EQ. You're in touch with your feelings. And she said, it's nice that a guy can show an emotional side as well as showing their intelligence. And so I meant it as a compliment to you. So I said, well, what does it have to do with being feminine? She said, it was my way of expressing that it's, nice that you can express yourself openly and that you don't fear that. So I think students who take my brand management class know that I'm pretty much an open book. I am who I am, and I'm completely comfortable in my own skin. They also know that I'm very, very passionate about everything I care about. Maybe I care too much about some of the things that I care about. Now, not my teaching, but for instance, I'm very concerned about what's going on in the United States and believe that this presidency may be damaging US democracy. So I get involved in discussions about why I believe that. So going back to my comment earlier about maybe it's a good thing I'm a little bit older. The best advice I ever got in my life was when I was 28. So I'd come back from Nestle in Switzerland from my course at Vevey. I'd launched that new salad dressing, and I'm about maybe 7 months on from that. We used to work in an open plan office, myself and a couple of other brand managers near the group product manager. That would be like a director of marketing now. And in the corner over there was the head of sales and the head of the business unit. We used to be called business units. Anyway, one day I'd gone to chat to the group product manager, and the group product manager had taken me to task for something which I believe was completely unfair. So we had private conference rooms if you needed to have a private discussion. And so I set up a meeting, I invited him to it, and I told him what the purpose of it. He said, sure, if you want to talk about what I said, I'm happy to have that conversation. Anyway, a few minutes into the discussion, I think my passionate dislike of what had occurred with him became very obvious in my tone, in my mannerisms, in my body language. And I can be very articulate when I'm angry. It's kind of funny. When the more angry I get, the more sharper my mind is. Anyway, he let me complete my my little speech to him. And at the end of it, he said, okay. He said, you made some very good points and you made them very well. And I accept that what happened, probably it's clear now that perhaps I could have changed the way that I approached that discussion with you. So let me just say that I'm going to apologize for this misunderstanding between us. He said, are we clear on that, Ashley? So I said, yeah. I said, I was quite happy, starting to calm down. Then he looked at me and he said, now let me deal with the second part. If you ever speak to me like that again, you will be fired, and walked out of the door, the front entrance of Nestle on that very same day. I was like, what? Then he said, look, Ashley, he said, there is no doubt about it that you're a very passionate guy. And he said, your passion is your greatest strength. Like, you are so focused, you're so driven. You know, when you're working on something that you love, you're just into it. But he said, passion is a very interesting thing. There's a fine line between being passionate and focused. And so using your passion as a powerful tool and crossing the line where your passion becomes dysfunctional. And he said, this conversation that we've just had is an example of that. He said, you know, to do well in life, you're going to have to learn to control the good part of your passion. So it's always a powerful tool for you. Don't ever allow yourself to be in a situation where somebody like me, who likes and admires you, walks you out the front door because you've lost control of your passion. And I will tell you that advice, I was 28. I've remembered that a number of times during my life, where I have, in different jobs or different contexts, started to go a little bit over the line. And because of what my boss, I still remember his name, Andre Gross, that little bit of advice has stood me in good stead my entire career. It's like for many of us, our strengths can be a weakness if we don't know how to use it in the right way at the right times. Well, if you haven't read How Brands Grow and you think you're a marketing student, or you think you're an experienced marketer, I mean, it's the single biggest challenge I would throw at anybody. You must read How Brands Grow. And if you're going to read the first one, don't buy the hard copy, the red book. You must buy the digital copy because it has hundreds of edits over the original hardcover that was published, which has not been republished. So you must buy the digital version of that book. Sadly, there is no digital version yet of How Brands Grow 2, so we use the hard copy in my class. But really, you know, people have to have an understanding of Ehrenberg Bass because it really makes us rethink, you know, what is the pathway to brand growth? And indisputably, the most important pathway is penetration. And the most important things we must do to gain penetration in markets is to build high levels of mental and physical availability. And so it's critical. There are differing views on what I'm about to say. So the one view is that brands should not be distracted from their job of building mental availability and physical availability in a market. And mental availability, of course, is building links to your brand, to category entry points in customers' minds, reasons to buy a particular category. And the other part of that mental network needs to be distinctive brand assets brand assets other than the brand name. Think about the Tiffany box with a white ribbon that help the brand come to mind in, be noticed or come to mind in buying situations. So most of what's been written recently is that you should stick to the knitting. Don't be distracted by the issues of the day. Let's call them politics, cultural issues. I do think, however, that the Nike commercial with Kaepernick is underrated by too many people. Now, the challenge that with that kind of advertising is that, let's call it purpose-driven advertising. It's been criticized in the sense that if purpose is not at the core of your brand, think Dove and the Dove brand campaign, where, you know, their purpose has been at the heart of that campaign for many years. So it stood the test of time. And of course, Unilever now uses purpose as a key part of their brand platforms for all of their brands. Nike has not really done that. So Nike has always been about just do it. It's about being your best athlete. You know, you yourself be your best athlete. And suddenly they start stepping into areas which are not core to their social purpose or even the real purpose of their business. I do believe, though, that there is opportunities for brands to do that. And if you think about the Nike campaign, and if you look past just customers, but you think of their core franchise in areas like basketball, in the shoes that they make for basketball, in the players that they have who are their spokespeople, you start to see their advertising as being not just an appeal to society, to recognize that, you know, taking a knee bravely, you know, when a national anthem is being played, I think bravely, and I also think courteously. I think taking a knee as an combat veteran is not an insult. An insult would be sitting with your legs crossed, but taking a knee is a well-known military way of, let's call it like a kneeling salute almost. It's not quite a salute, but it's a relaxed way of sitting, which is not, you're still aware, okay, when you're told to take a knee, because normally it's to get a bit of a rest, but to listen attentively to what you're being told, either orders or, you know, something that facilitates your operations as a military group. So that Kaepernick campaign for me, I think, was underrated. I think it was attacked by too many folks who didn't like the politics of it, attacked by too many people who thought that it wasn't sticking to their core mission of be your best athlete. It was starting to tread in these kinds of areas. And yet I think that brands have a responsibility to also make the world a better place. And I think the advertising was connected strongly to their core business, which is sports and athletics. So that's the one that comes to mind most recently for me in terms of not being valued enough. And I would actually say it had such a profound impact on me that there's nothing else that comes to mind in the same way. Now, that said, I can tell you that there were a number of brands that jumped on the bandwagon of COVID and used kind of how much we care for our customers as they suddenly switched off their advertising, which might have been building category entry points, might have been way of building memory structures for non-customers and light customers and refreshing memory structures for current customers. And suddenly they were running advertising, which was, you know, we're in COVID too, we care about you. And I looked at a lot of this advertising and I thought it made no sense at all. It provided very little value. I think it would have been much better for many of those companies to rather say things like, if you imagine as a general storyline, we're all dealing with this pandemic. At our company, we know that there are shortages everywhere. We've been working very hard with our supply chain systems, with our overseas suppliers. We've been doing some extraordinary things. We've had to close a few stores, but we've been working hard on our internet shopping capability. And we currently have in stock these items. In other words, I think the message, if it was tied to their core business and tied to what they were actually doing to help customers during COVID, would have been dramatically better than just messages about, we're all in this together and, we share your pain. It's like, that's not useful. How's that been useful? Whereas you see, I think the Kaepernick campaign had some real usefulness to it. Okay. Anyway, those are just my thoughts for what it's worth. Drucker. The purpose of business is to get and keep a customer. And it's my favorite quote without any doubt, because I'm a marketing guy and I think marketing is business. I think the very heart of marketing is business. And I don't mean the marketing function. I mean that businesses must act as marketing entities. It is not the responsibility of the marketing team. It's the responsibility of everyone who works in the business to ensure that the value proposition that gets created, delivered, communicated to customers enables the organization to get and keep customers. So we now know, of course, updated knowledge since that was written by Peter Drucker, that the main pathway to organizations winning is about penetration. That means acquiring new customers, because customers tend to be naturally loyal. If you're delivering the category benefits well enough, it provides them, and once you're in their repertoires, you pretty much remain in their repertoires. As long as you don't provide them with reason to leave your franchise, because you're no longer delivering the category benefits well. So that's the one proviso that I would give, is that this idea of that the focus should be on penetration, so more the getting than keeping. But I do think the keeping is very important. And if we take the new knowledge that we have for Ehrenberg Bass, and if we think about, the basis for competition in most product markets that have been around for a while, are delivering qualifying benefits very well in those product markets, not giving customers a reason to leave, then we can get an understanding of what the purpose of business is, to get and keep a customer, because the keeping is not really the responsibility of the marketing department per se. You keep customers because it takes the entire organization operating as a single marketing entity to create, deliver, and communicate the value proposition that customers are seeking. Whether you're somebody working in supply chain, or you're working in sales, or you're working in marketing, or whatever part of the organization in, you have a link to ensuring that your organization is doing that. So, maybe my other favorite quote is Ashley Konson, by Ashley Konson. We're all marketers, okay, regardless of your function in an organization. I just made that up now, but it seemed like a good way to maybe even complete our interview for today.